In all of my years in the gym, I've seen a lot of exercises done incorrectly. I've seen guys bench press in a way that would destroy their shoulder joints. I've also seen guys load the bar for a squat only to travel a quarter of the range, building nothing more than their ego. But there are 5 must-do exercises that have been butchered far worse than any other exercise. The problem is, if you do these movements the way most trainees do them, you'll achieve very little in terms of muscle activation as well as increase the risk of injury. And that's one huge reason why you're probably not seeing the results you feel you deserve. If you want to avoid looking silly in the gym while wasting time and damaging your joints with improper execution, watch out for these 5 common exercises you're doing completely wrong. Exercise number 1. Lat pull down. It seems like a simple enough movement, yet the way most people perform this exercise does very little for the lats. There are 3 common mistakes with the lat pull down that are robbing you of a wide aesthetic back. Mistake number 1. Using the biceps. The lats are responsible for shoulder adduction, but you're also involving elbow flexion during the movement, which is why it's no mystery that the biceps can be heavily involved during the lat pull down. To ensure you're using less biceps and more lats during this exercise, here's what I recommend. First, initiate the pull down by depressing your shoulder blades or pushing them downwards. Now that you've engaged the lats, picture there being a string on the sides of your hips hooked to your elbows on the same side. If the strings were pulled, your elbows would move towards your hips. Basically, you lead with the elbows rather than by yanking the bar with your hands. I like to think of my hands as nothing more than hooks that connect me with the bar. Mistake number 2 is pulling too low. I always talk about using a full range of motion, but there's such a thing as doing too much. If you pull the bar below the neck and down below the nipple line, you're no longer keeping tension on the lat muscles. Instead, you're activating your internal rotators. To ensure you're not pulling too low, pull the bar down to around the mid-neck or the bottom of your neck at most. This will ensure you're using a full range of motion without removing tension from the lats and involving other muscles. Mistake number 3 is jerking the bar. If you yank the bar and lean back as much as you can, you're turning it more into a horizontal row, training more mid-back rather than a vertical pull that works mostly the lats. To avoid this mistake, try leaning only slightly backwards, just enough to pull the bar towards your neck without hitting your face, and pull using the elbows as mentioned earlier. Exercise number 2. Squats. Although there are many ways to butcher this exercise, there are 3 common mistakes most people make that are not only making the squats less effective, but more dangerous as well. Mistake number 1, not going low enough. A 2013 study published in the European Journal of Applied Physiology compared deep squats to shallow squats. They found that squatting with a full range of motion resulted in significantly more strength and muscle growth than squatting above parallel. A similar, more recent study showed that half squats resulted in no significant increases in strength or muscle mass, only significantly more pain, stiffness, and discomfort. It's not too surprising why. When you stop mid-range and change the direction of the squat, the force doesn't get properly transferred. Instead, the stress goes straight to the knees. Mistake number 2 is not tracking the knees over the toes. If you've ever felt knee pain from squatting, it's likely because your knees are not tracking over your toes. Imagine a scenario where your toes are pointing one way and your knee is moving in a different direction. Now imagine adding a heavy bar on your back as you squat in this position. The stress on your knees will be amplified and it won't be long before you cause serious damage. So remember, keep the knees over the toes when squatting to ensure you're in a stronger and safer position. Mistake number 3, not getting the bar tight on the back. If the bar is too high on your back or you don't tuck your elbows under the bar, you're leaking force production. In other words, you'll be loose and weaker when you want to be tight and stronger. To ensure you're in a strong position, grab the barbell at a grip width that allows you to comfortably get under the bar while staying as tight as possible. If your grip width is super wide, your back won't be tight. As you unrack the bar, you want to keep your elbows directly underneath it if possible. A good cue is to protect your armpits. If your elbows are pointed backwards and your armpits are exposed, chances are your back is loose. So keep the bar tight on your back at all times. Exercise number 3, dumbbell row. The one-arm dumbbell row is tricky because it's hardly ever done correctly. Also, it goes against the common instinct of pulling the dumbbell upwards towards your torso, which brings me to the biggest mistake people make with the dumbbell row: pulling straight up. One of the main functions of the lats is shoulder extension. If you pull straight up, the lats will be worked in the beginning of the movement, but the biceps will take over for the remainder of the rep. If there is an excessive bend in the elbow during the dumbbell row, it means the biceps are more involved than they need to be. Instead, lead with the elbow towards the hips. The goal with this movement is to row in an arch rather than pull in a straight line. Once this issue is corrected, the dumbbell row will become one of the most effective lat exercises in your arsenal. Exercise number 4, Romanian deadlift. The RDL is one of the best and most effective exercises for achieving bigger and stronger hamstrings. The problem is the way most people perform this exercise does more for the back and quads than it does for the muscle you're targeting. If you're not feeling your hamstrings during the Romanian deadlift, here are 3 cues you can use to ensure you're performing them effectively. Number 1, bend over. Most people use the bar as a counterweight and lean back. Instead, you should be bending over a little. Number 2, push your hips to the wall behind you. As you bend over, push your hips backwards. This is the hip hinge and is the absolute most important aspect of the RDL. You reverse the movement only when you can't push your butt back any further. And number 3, slightly bend the knees. If you feel the tension go straight to your lower back, you're either bending over without moving your hips back or you're bending your knees too much. When you bend the knees too much, the tension leaves the hamstrings and goes to your quads. Instead, keep only a slight bend in the knees. This will ensure you're keeping the tension on the hamstrings rather than shifting it over to your lower back. Exercise number 5, lateral raise. If you struggle hitting your mid-delts effectively with lateral raises, you're probably making one of these mistakes. Mistake number 1, not reaching outwards. The middle deltoid is responsible for shoulder abduction. That means lifting the arms out to the sides away from the body, not to be confused with lifting the arms up. Instead of just lifting the dumbbells up, think about scraping your knuckles against the walls to your sides. In other words, you're actively reaching out, not just up. Mistake number 2 is raising too high. Like I mentioned before, you want a full range of motion, not as much motion as possible. When you raise the weight above your shoulder, you're emphasizing the upper traps, not the mid delts. Now, I wouldn't say there's too much wrong with a little extra trap activation, but this will likely make it harder to activate the middle deltoid since it's a pretty small muscle. My recommendation is to lift the dumbbells to shoulder height. And mistake number 3, lifting in the wrong plane. Lateral raises shouldn't be completely to your sides, and they also shouldn't turn into front raises. The middle deltoid will fire up the most when you raise your arms to your sides, but ever so slightly in front of you. We call this the scapular plane. Doing lateral raises in the scapular plane will place the most amount of tension on the mid delts, making it far easier to feel them working. So there you have it, 5 must-do exercises you're doing completely wrong. While I can't list every single mistake and every single fix, these are the most common and also most damaging mistakes trainees are making. If you take note on these mistakes and fix them today, you'll be saving yourself from years of frustration and minimal progress. Did you find this video helpful? If so, click the like button below as it'll truly help out the channel. Also, right now you can get 25% off on all supplements plus free shipping anywhere in the world. All you have to do is shoot me a text at 407-993-1291 and I'll reply with a coupon code you can use. And yes, when you text that number, it will be me you're speaking with. So pull out your phone and text me right now. If you can't reach me there for any reason, then feel free to shoot me a DM on Instagram at musclemonsters and I'll hook you up that way. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe for more videos and don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss the next one. Peace.